You all know the rules, so if you disrupt this meeting and make any sounds, you're going to be asked to leave. So let's just jump into the meeting. I want to thank Council Members O'Farrell and Rodriguez for being here as well. We have a quorum. Madam Clerk, we'll go ahead and start the meeting. With that, let's go into multiple speaker cards first. So if there's a card that's not filled out with any real name, then I'm going to file it. So Eric Previn. I didn't say a real name, but a name that's not even legible and clearly made up. Not going to call it. So, Mr. Previn.
They're referring to me, I assume.
Okay. The shoe fits. Go ahead.
It's Eric Previn from Studio City. And here we are at, I believe it's a special meeting, which means that technically 24-hour notice. And
You are on items 1, 6, 7, 9. Okay, speak to the items.
No, I am. I'm describing where we are, sir. That's allowed. And it's a Public Safety Committee meeting, and it's one of the last ones from this guy, but thank you, sir, and for all your service. We have several items today where we're buying advertisements in the newspaper to put the word out to catch criminals. I just want to bring to our attention that there's a $1,900, I believe, TK on that exactly, to the LA Times, and we've got a special one today to celebrate the Taste of Soul last weekend for Bakewell's Sentinel. So we buy ads to help get criminals, which is good. But the timing is often curious for those of us who are tracking, because it's such a political environment in the city of Los Angeles. Item number 10, you have earthquake preparedness is critical, CERT is important, and they wanted to put together a cache in Blumenfield's district, C-A-C-H-E, don't get excited. And it's a, for where people can store their appropriate stuff and get the fire department to inventory, so we're all as prepared as we can. I certainly support that kind of thing. In terms of the appointment today, it's very exciting to have a bigwig like Eileen Decker in the hall. She was the former U.S. attorney, and we're going to be moving to the police commission, I believe. It's great to get these appointments going. Also, Scott Svonkin from the College Community District has now moved over to probation. You got a probation item there as well. And Eric Bauman has been reappointed to the Insurance Commission at LA County as of yesterday. He's the chairman of the Democratic Party, so they're waiving the term limit so he can keep serving. We have an environment where there's kind of some complexity there, meaning nobody wants to hear from anybody on the other side. So in Studio City, we're going to have an open forum on both Fridays before the statewide election, and everybody's welcome, all the candidates.
This is not anything on the agenda.
Well, it has to do with Eileen Decker being a...
No, it doesn't. You having a candidate forum does not. So go ahead and start his clock for general public comment.
I don't think that you're...
1 minute for general public comment.
Okay, my general public comment will be, first of all, to disagree with your attitude. I'm speaking cogently on point, and I want to say that we foster debate here in Los Angeles, but the team to beat, which is the incumbents, don't. And that's why you are changing your campaign finance ordinance, but you're not modifying it such that candidates who qualify for the ballot...
It's not under items under the purview of this committee, so you got to speak to items that are under the purview of this committee. No. Okay, stick to public safety.
What are you talking about? You're really out of line. Don't interrupt.
No, I was saying you were out of line. You got to stick to the items under
the... relevant to this office.
You've
raised
committee.
A ton of money.
It's this committee. Okay, cut off his time. You're done. You're not speaking under the items under the purview of this committee, and those are the rules. So now you're disrupting the meeting. Now you're disrupting the meeting. Antonio, Ma'am Ramirez, you know the rules too. Don't disrupt this meeting. Okay, can you go ahead and escort him out? I've already told him numerous times. You're still continuously disrupting this meeting, and you're still doing it now. Sergeants, please show him out. Thank you. Mr. Previn, you're disrupting this meeting. You're still doing it. You're still talking out. So you've already been asked to leave. Sergeants, go ahead and help him out. We're going to hold on to this meeting right now until he go ahead and vacates the room. You've been warned multiple times. You know all the rules. You're here constantly disrupting the meeting. You're here constantly breaking the rules. So you're continuing to disrupt the meeting now and speaking out and refusing to leave. Go ahead. Mr. Previn, you're holding up this meeting. Until you leave, you're holding up this meeting and disrupting the meeting. You've already been asked to leave. So, okay, you're still disrupting the meeting and calling out. You're continuing to do so. Continuing to do so as you're leaving the meeting. Thank you, Eric. I'm sure we'll see you in council. Okay, you're still yelling out in the hallway and cursing at the officers. You should really calm down a little bit. Take a breath. Maybe try to Switch to decaf. Mr. Rue, good morning. All right. Wayne, come on up.
That's a good point. Yes. So we get to item number 1. We get Eileen Decker, the former U.S. attorney that helped scuttle all the investigations of the FBI against the mayor, now becomes a police commissioner. She went all the way to the U.S. attorney, and then when Donald Trump became president, he immediately fired her ass right out of that seat because she could not be trusted, Monica. And you know we can't trust Eileen Decker. Eileen Decker likes to cover up crime for you and you and you. But she makes a perfect police commissioner. And that's why you'll support her unanimously as she goes biddy, biddy, boom, boom, and shoots more innocent suspects. Miss Decker will go, they were within policy guidelines. Right, Miss Decker? That's right. Now we get to number 2, and we go to the police permit review panel. The continuing revolving door of Ryan the Dick Duckett. Yes, the Dick Duckett is going to go into the police permit, whip out his dick, and say yes to all of the liquor licenses. Everybody have a drink on Ryan Dick Duckett. Yes, so congratulations. And he'll run out in a few years. Now, we get to the supplemental police account. All the money's been stolen, Miss Decker. You'll receive and file that. Then we get to the city administrative officer grant, the real estate fraud prosecution. No problem. Miss Decker, before she left the U.S. attorney, deleted all the emails and destroyed all the files. Good job. And as we go on through this, you have to realize something. Miss Decker, Eric Garcetti will never be president. You'll never be attorney general.
You're not speaking on the applicant.
yeah, well,
Start as 1 minute for general public
Okay,
comment.
yeah, that's right.
Stick to the items under the purview of this.
So my 1 minute is that you threw poor Eric
We're not
Previn.
speaking to items of the purview of this committee, so you're going to lose your time as well. I've already warned you. That's your final warning.
I'm talking about the procedures of the meeting. Is that correct, Madam City Attorney? Is that on the agenda? Of course it is. So again, what's on the item here? Public safety. And the reason we have public safety is because we have council members who have small members that like to do things with cops. Bad things, Miss Decker, bad things. So they like to use sergeants to intimidate people and call it public safety. They like to arrest people falsely and call it public safety. But the good news is that on this committee and the proposition of it, we're going to get rid of Mitchell Englander, the short dick cocksucker, off this committee.
Thank you very much for
your
time.
Oh, thank you, sir.
Armando, Herman, come on up.
So another urban public safety concern. And how has the mayor's report, along with the city administrator's officers, authorizing such a safety report? Well, there is no homeland security. We know that the wetback immigrants are marching on the bridges, crossing the dams to get into our homeland. And Homeland Security is going to prevent that. That's why we have Ms. Decker on the new police commission. But in other words, what I'm trying to say, you're not safe in LA. I know so very well. Being homeless and being treated abusively by public safety officers and fearing for my life, watching you abruptly disrupt this meeting by taking Mr. Eric Previn out by threat because he was responding to a public safety concern of the reappointment of funding, which I disagree with. The funding should be spent on sending wetback immigrants back to Israel and burying the white niggers where they belong.
You're not on topic under this committee, so go ahead and start as 1 minute for general public comment under items that are in the purview of this committee.
You're fucking kidding me. public safety and this little short dick public safety.
Okay, you're not on the, under items under the
that
purview
I
of this
can't
committee,
speak about the
jurisdiction of this
security
committee. Are you going to lose your 1 minute?
Of homeless people in LA.
Excuse me for 1
Homeless
second.
people continue to be
Wayne, you're still
threatened by
disrupting this meeting by making the noises.
Jews like
We've already told you.
who say
Pause this time
your
for a minute.
Safety and sidewalk.
Armando,
What?
stop talking for a minute.
How can I talk? You're running the clock.
Stop talking. I stopped the clock. Wayne, you're dismissed from this meeting for disrupting it. You keep making animal sounds. You've already been told. It was the puppet? Okay, so you could take the puppet and leave the meeting. No. Stop talking. You're still disrupting the meeting. Goodbye, Wayne. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Go. All right.
May I have a...
Wayne, you're disrupting the meeting. Please gather your belongings and go. Well, that was years ago, but please go, keep going. Thank you. All right. Thank you very much.
Now that you
All right,
speak,
you're disrupting the meeting, too. I already froze your
My
time.
turn to speak,
No,
and
your time was frozen. Now you're disrupting this
wait,
meeting.
as long as there's
Okay.
sexual trafficking,
Armando,
if there's
go ahead and leave the meeting, too. You're disrupting the
trafficking
meeting.
in the,
Goodbye.
in the belly, you
Go ahead and
Wait,
escort him out.
Can't you
Thank you.
get me
Goodbye.
kicked out? I'm not kicked out of that.
Thank you.
Goddamn little midget.
Goodbye. Thank you. And again, continuing to disrupt this meeting. Thank you very much. Goodbye. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. Continuing to disrupt the meeting. Thank you. Thank you. Take you and your little dog, too. Thank you. Bye-bye. All right, so now we can actually maybe conduct some business and some public business of this meeting, now that we've gone through the sideshow of what we go through each and every meeting. Perhaps we should change the agendas to carve out time just for that, and then have the public come in. I don't know. We'll look at something else. In any event, good morning. Welcome to the Public Safety Committee meeting. Let's go ahead and jump into the agenda. I've got a number of items, colleagues, that I'd like to consider for consent. Oh, I'm sorry. I still have Antonio. I'm sorry. Ms. Ramirez has been incredibly patient. Come on up. I apologize. Multiple speaker cards.
Thank you. I'm going to consolidate 6, 7, 8, and 10. Public safety notice, as it reads, gang stalking. This neighborhood has ongoing gang stalking activity. The crime is not related to street gangs. Rather, it involves illegal surveillance and harassment of individuals by multiple perpetrators called perps or brown nosers working together. Often the stalking is done for vengeance or to silence potential whistleblowers. Gangbangers are also involved in gang stalkings. Perpetrators who manage organized stalking operations are usually associated with the government's agencies and contractors, or they are corrupt members or former members of law enforcement, community enforcement, or criminal enforcement. Tactics include threats, abusive comments, theft, breaking into victims' residence, slander, lying and trashing the victim, harassment by noise, sometimes from nearby residences, illegal tappings, phone lines, hacking computers, poisoning other individuals, and serious violations of state and federal law. Radio frequency weaponry, maims, tortures, and slow kills. Directed energy weapons are covert and lethal weapons also used on targeted individuals or victims of gang stalking. Please look to targeted justice.com or citizensaht.org or countertruth.com or fightinggangstalking.com. And with my remaining time, I will say that we have an epidemic, ladies and gentlemen. I too am homeless due to gang stalking. Not because I am a criminal, not because I do drugs. I don't do drugs, I don't drink, I don't smoke, and I'm not a med patient. But what I do is stand up against corruption, fraud, and abuse. We are under siege by these goddamn wetbacks and gangbangers who are hell-bent on destroying America. I will fight them tooth and nail to restore the integrity of America. God bless Donald Trump and America.
Start your 1 minute for general public comment.
Thank you. And again, ladies and gentlemen, I am grateful that we have a president who's got the balls to be a man. True masculinity is on the throne in Washington.
If you can address
Yes, we
items
are.
under the purview of this committee.
Public safety is an
Thank you.
issue here. No funds should be given to Los Angeles. No federal funding or federal grants should be given to Los Angeles because we as homeless women have been tortured, abused, and robbed by these fucking goddamn gangbangers and wetbacks and all the junkies and all the other criminal elements that nobody, not the police and not the sheriffs, can handle. I understand that. I now understand that. So I do give them credit. They try. God knows they try. But goddamn, give us a fucking bazooka and blow these motherfuckers because these gangbangers have robbed us of everything, right to our very core. We have been stripped and we live in the fucking raw, and we bring that to you to see how it feels to be robbed while you're being in a sleeping tent, you're being rattled, you're being attacked, you're being attacked and violated
Okay,
in
thank
every
you.
sense of the word. God bless America.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Eileen, welcome back. So with that, colleagues, I will ask for items 1, 11, and 14 to be heard with the balance of the agenda on consent. I want to see if we have any specials. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and approve the balance of the items with the exception of 1, 11, and 14, which we will hear. Without objection, that'll be the order. And we have
And with,
reports that need to be adopted.
yes, with those, with the CAO reports, recommendations?
Yes, with the recommendations from the CAO as well. And that'll be the order. Thank you very much. Thank you, colleagues. General public comment is closed, and we have no other speaker cards on any of the other items. We'll go ahead and hear item 1, and that is the appointment of Miss Eileen Decker to the Board of Police Commissioners. Welcome. Good morning. I would say we specially arranged some favorite speakers for you this morning, but that wasn't the case. That's just normal.
Yes, I understand.
So welcome back.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's great to have you back. Before you jump in, colleagues, want to let you know I've had the honor and the privilege of working with Ms. Decker for many, many years. And she has really been the cornerstone of public safety for the city of Los Angeles, and has done so much with both police and fire to really revolutionize and adopt cutting-edge programs and turning around both departments. I won't say single-handedly, I would say under your leadership, because you really brought an army with you to make sure that we went through so much from under a federal consent decree to rolling brownouts in the fire department. It's so many tragedies here in Los Angeles, and also interdepartmental and functions of each department, and brought incredible transparency to the process, and have always been a breath of fresh air to work with. And I think the recommendation from the mayor to select you to the police commission is phenomenal. I mean, that you bring so much experience, and so I congratulate you before you even open up and say what an honor it is to have you on that what I consider one of the most important commissions in the city of Los Angeles. So, good morning.
Well, good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much for those kind words. It means a great deal to me, particularly because we worked on so many of those projects together with our respective staffs and, of course, with the police and fire department. So thank you. Thank you for your time this morning. Thank you to all the members of the committee who I feel like I know so well and have worked with for so many years. It's a real honor to be back, and to be frank, it feels a bit like coming home in a way, and seeing so many friendly and familiar faces, both here in City Hall and across the street at LAPD. I'm truly honored by this nomination, and I want to thank the mayor, of course, in addition to council, for considering that nomination. It is a great honor, and I look forward to working with council and with all the members of the LAPD to continue to work on the security and safety of the city, which I care about just so much. I feel like it is part of my very being, and to be able to give back to this city, which I just love, is a true honor. So thank you for considering my nomination. And I look forward to addressing the many challenges ahead. I realize it's not going to be easy. Some things have changed since I left to become U.S. Attorney. But I feel my time here in the city as well as U.S. Attorney will serve me well. First, because I know so many people in the city. I'm hopeful that that means I can help get things done for the department as appropriate for a commissioner. To the extent I can help, I want to. But also my time as a prosecutor, I feel will allow me to really work on the oversight mission, which is core to the mission of the commission, and being able to judge those cases fairly and independently based on the facts. I feel that experience will really come to bear in this job. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Just open it up to my colleagues.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Eileen, I think it's an incredible gift that you have accepted the opportunity to serve in this capacity. I think you have an incredible depth of knowledge for the department that I think is going to be very important in the role that you have agreed to serve in. So I just wanted to say thank you, and it's great to see you back.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, Ms. Decker, notwithstanding your great accomplishments as a U.S. Attorney, I just want to relay a personal experience, professional, but personal experience that I had with Ms. Decker when she was Deputy Mayor of Public Safety early on. We had a significant emergency, and which involved a house fire with 2 deaths early on, and I was kind of outraged with the response that I got from the team that Ms. Decker oversees, and I let her know that I was less than satisfied, and your judgment-free response and the way that you handled my unhappiness and the way that you dealt with the crises that some of my residents were facing was immediate. You fixed the problem, and your response was outstanding. And we don't always get what I would call a judgment-free response when we're unhappy with a result in our district from a variety of sources, because we take a lot of pride in our work and we get passionate about what we believe in, et cetera. But when it came right down to the needs that those who were in crises were living with, your response and your follow-up was outstanding, and it stands out to me 5 years later, because that was about 5 years ago. And you had teams on the ground dealing with the residents who had been traumatized immediately when the moment you got involved in this. So the fact that you can deal with unsatisfactory situations will serve you extremely well as a commissioner for the LAPD, because you got a sense with the sideshow that we opened with on some of the things you'll deal with. But beyond that, there are so many activists and advocates who are troubled, I think, and express their frustrations beyond what we all see as sometimes reasonable. But I think with your demeanor and with your deep level of understanding and empathy, I think you're going to add such a strong element to that commission that you'll serve it well, and you'll actually play a role in elevating the collective demeanor of that commission. And I think it'll go a long way in helping your colleagues on that commission deal with some of the issues of the day. So I look forward to seeing what kind of impact you're going to make, because I think it's going to be very, very positive. So I'm delighted with your appointment, and you have my full-fledged support. And I want to thank you for volunteering for this, because it is, for all practical purposes, a very thankless volunteer job. But I believe that you're the kind of person who really does, at the end of the day, feel great satisfaction knowing that you personally and professionally contributed to helping solve issues for the public. And I think that's very reflective of who you are and what your character is made of. So I just wanted to relay that story, and I think that it positions you very well for this position. And know that we'll always appreciate your volunteerism in this role.
Thank you, Councilman. Your kind words truly mean a great deal to me. I sincerely appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was very well said. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good seeing you again, Ms. Decker. It was such a pleasure to talk with you in my office. I think that was last week, and I very much look forward to working with you again. And, you know, and as we talked before, your predecessor left some big shoes to fill, especially as an advocate of community policing. But I very much look forward to working with you when and if and when your appointment is confirmed in a couple hours, right?
Yeah, no, I don't think there's an if. I think it's a when. Yeah.
Well, welcome back to City Hall.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And so with that, we do have one public comment card. And so we'll go ahead and take Derek. Still here? Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Good morning. Thanks for being here.
How are you guys doing?
Excellent.
Awesome. Sorry, we're still penning some of this.
Take your time.
Okay. Awesome. My name is Derek, and I wanted to discuss quickly item 11. This is my first time giving a public comment.
Item 11.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Then I'll tell you what. We're on item 1. No. I'll take 11 next, but go ahead and stay there.
Okay.
So you don't have to go back and forth. Okay.
Awesome.
No problem. And then you have a little time to collect your thoughts.
Great.
So with that, colleagues, I would like to ask for a vote to appoint Ms. Eileen Decker to the Board of Police Commissioners. So moved. And without objection, it's unanimous. Congratulations. Thank you so much, and we'll see you in council. Godspeed. Okay, now we'll go ahead and take up, let me see here. How about item 11? Okay,
yes.
Item 11, Derek, the floor is yours.
Okay, awesome. Good morning, everyone. My name is Derek Marshall. As a concerned citizen and promoter in the nightlife community, I'd encourage the committee to allow a bit more time for the community to respond and work with the city toward a solution that is good for everyone. My specific concerns are safety and the clause determining the predictability of past performance. Regarding safety, there are an estimated 100 unpermitted events happening in LA's underground each weekend. These spaces are filled with artists, intellectuals, and a huge draw of talent from New York City, London, Berlin, Amsterdam, etc. I love to say that Shakespeare was an underground nightlife promoter in Elizabethan England. These parties remain unpermitted not because the promoters want to exist outside the legal and moral framework and nonchalantly turn our heads from safety, but because the permitting process is already too cumbersome. And I want to sort of just point out that there are models, whether it be in Berlin, whether it be in Amsterdam, whether it be in New York City right now with the forming organization. And there is, in fact, a new coalition forming here in Los Angeles.
I got to have you wrap it up. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. And so I would just ask for a joint approach
Great.
and for a little bit more time before making this decision and to engage the community.
Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thanks for being here. And now I'm going to call the department up on this as well. I don't know if you have a presentation or you just want to sit for questions and answer. So, good morning. If you can introduce yourselves for the record. You're gone.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Council, Chief Beard, Public Safety.
Scott Miller, Commander of the Public Assemblage Unit.
Great. Excellent. Thank you. Do you have any overview, or do you want to just jump into questions and answers? I'm comfortable with both.
We can jump into questions and answers,
Great.
sir.
So I'm going to, colleagues, if I could, jump in here, and then I'm going to ask for your input as well. First and foremost, if we do have supposedly 100 underground events a week here in Los Angeles, or unpermitted DIYs, which is also what they're known in the industry, I think it's a fraction of what any other major city has, from my view in looking and doing a little research on this, not just in the United States, but the world. That's a small number. But one is too many. And on the side of enforcement and cracking down, we can have that discussion all day, and it's all about safety. And a lot of this has come out of what happened with Ghost Ship and other places. And I get that. Safety has to be in public safety, and the safety of the venue as well as the participants in the surrounding community has to be paramount, has to be the core function of the city. Bar none. People have to be safe. Having said that, too, we also have one of the most difficult regulatory frameworks for permitting these types of events. And where these events are critically important, from my view, is these are the cultural backbone. There's a cultural footprint that's created by these events, and most of them around either electronic or live music. And that is where culture hits the road in terms of creating a sense of community. And I also feel that we haven't, as a city, done anywhere near what most major cities in the world are doing, as was presented by our speaker, which is absolutely true. New York is adopting and looking at creating, for all intents and purposes, what Amsterdam started off as a mayor of nightlife, a cultural liaison, if you will, that Helsinki's doing, that Berlin is doing, that they're doing throughout Germany, so many other places in the world. And I think what we haven't done is to step back beyond creating more rules and regulations, and 99% of, I think, what's presented in front of us is very good. The fire department has to be engaged from day one, has to be able to sign off to make sure that we have ingress and egress, that there's two different types of events that are presented in the draft ordinance of those over 49 and those over 1,000 assemblages. And I think those are critically important to make sure that they have the medical plans in place, that they have evacuation plans in place, and all of that needs to be signed off on, like every other municipality. But we do it in silos. We haven't gotten together to create a cohesive, easy permitting system to welcome these types of gatherings, which I think are so important, particularly in communities that don't regularly get them. Communities of color, communities of poverty, of communities that want to embrace their own culture and have these kinds of events. It's even more difficult than it should be. And where I take pause, colleagues, is the language that's actually in the draft ordinance. Let me pull it up here. That is the safeguards against the development of dangerous levels of crowd density is on item 6. And evaluating the adequacy of the crowd management plan, the chief shall consider the anticipated size, predictability, and the behavior of audiences as demonstrated by past history of like audiences. I have some serious concern about that. To me, that's very discriminatory. It could be based on a bad operator. It could be based on so many different factors that really don't lend to, and it's too discretionary, that don't lend to opportunity. They close the door of opportunity of cultural events rather than open them. And to simply say, well, we've had a similar type of event, how far back? Who's the promoter? What was, none of that's taken into account. So I would suggest, strongly suggest, that if we're going to move this forward, and I think most of it's great, I have a question about the required medical plan, and I'll come back to that after my colleagues could weigh in, because I think this needs to be the area of focus personally. I would strike that language and move this forward until we can figure out what that means. Is there some type of committee or commission? And then I would also ask that we come up and report back to how do we streamline this process? How do we embrace cultural activity, particularly nightlife cultural activity, while making the city safe and the community safe and the people that are assembling safe, rather than try to drive things underground? And so I think that we need to, and particularly with the Olympics coming and being an international city, we got to get this right. One of the first things people do when they travel, when they go out of town, whether it's for business or otherwise, one of the first things, particularly millennials, will do is they Google restaurants and they Google nightlife. They want to know, where am I going to go, what am I going to do? And the more we shut these things down, we're already one of the most difficult cities because of the hours of operation where everything closes down at 2, last call's at 1:30. And while I'm not here to talk about that, it creates this this window where those in the service industry, the waiters and waitresses, the busboys, the ones working in a kitchen, the ones working in hotels, when they get off at 11 o'clock or 9 or 12 o'clock at night, they can't go out. They're done. They have no nightlife. They don't have that culture. Those opportunities are greatly diminished. And so, creating unique spaces where we can celebrate culture is critically important. And I think that item 6 really needs to be flushed out and made transparent in such a way that people understand it. And that's just my perspective. So I'm going to ask my colleagues to weigh in on that because I want to hear your thoughts. Ms. Rodriguez, do you? Nothing? Mr. Rue?
Yes. And thank you, Mr. Chair, for really laying that out. I think this is very, very important, not just for issues that have gone on in other cities, but most recently, there was that assemblage for some famous star, I believe in Hollywood, where there was a stampede, and they couldn't account for all of the crowd capacity. So, I mean, this is a real safety issue, and this is a real thing. I just had a question. So, I was reading the ordinance. So, based on this new proposed ordinance, any location that could hold more than 49 people would be required to get a permit now? Or can you?
Sir, if it was being used was classified as an assemblage.
As an assemblage?
Yes.
So can you define what an assemblage is? Because I was trying to read it. It says, it gives examples, and it says, it includes showing of motion pictures when an admission is charged. So if it's a free event versus a paid event, I mean, yeah.
Well, the definition of assemblage is it's a Group A occupancy. Assembly Group A occupancy includes, among others, the use of a building or structure or a portion thereof for the gathering of persons for purposes such as civic, social, or religious functions, recreation, food or drink consumption, or waiting transportation. And also, if you're showing a motion picture, but you're charging. Okay. And you can have up to 10 people for that. If it's more than 10 people, if you're charging for entry. So if it's free, you're fine.
So clearly, I don't know if I have a different version here, but worship, there's no charge, or if there's a consumption of food or drink. So if someone had a large barbecue or potluck, which had about 60 people, then they would have to get a permit. Or the venue would have to get a permit.
Depends on if the venue was designed for that purpose. If the venue was not designed for that purpose, yes, there'd be a permit required. If the venue was designed for that purpose, no permit would be required. The assemblage that we work from is based out of the building code, and this is an extension of that where we're using an area for a purpose that it was not really designed. From a practical standpoint, we would not be looking at barbecues and things of that nature, but say if a company was going to do a company function in their parking lot and they were going to invite 150 employees into the parking lot, yes, we would look to permit it and go through a review of life safety requirements.
But if that company went to a venue across the street that was designed for a gathering, some sort of a theater or something like that, then they would not require a permit since it's already a venue.
Since it's already a venue, it's already permitted under a business permit for that purpose and fire permit.
So how would you differentiate then someone just calling it a barbecue versus an actual event, right? Because if someone has a large home or a parking facility and they
What about a political fundraiser?
call it, I mean, how,
I didn't think about all this.
First of all, I'd like to say that we would not be imposing any regulations on homes.
Okay.
That the fire department does not regulate parties at houses or people's homes. Home is their castle kind of an approach.
Yeah.
So we're only talking about public areas that this would be happening. It would not include public parks because they're designed for that purpose as well. But typically, in the development or the entertainment industry, When they start bringing in caterers and they start bringing in entertainment industry elements, it starts to define itself for what it is, which is an event.
What about something like a record signing or something like that at a record store or entertainment store where some author or some author of a book or an artist, singing artist, recording artist comes in for signing and they only expect 40 people but 200 people show up? They would require.
That would depend, because generally speaking, when those types of events happen, they've put together a management program for how they're going to manage the people as they come, and they'll queue them outside of the store or outside of the building. And they don't bring in large groups of people into the buildings themselves. They'll usually bring in manageable amounts that are within the normal use of the building. So that in itself would not generate a required permit. But it does help if they come to us and allow us to assist them in planning it so that they do manage it, so that they don't have to fall into that.
I think you brought up several good points about the barbecue, also thinking about, if you don't mind, about like if somebody was having a political function, a fundraiser, and they knew they're going to have a few hundred people and charge $25. If the book signing, as your example, something didn't go right and something happened, well, all of a sudden we're not going to have any more book signings, or by this particular artist, or that type of genre, if you will. Colleagues, I think this is a great solution in search of a problem, because I don't see these problems throughout the city of Los Angeles on a regular basis. I don't know if there's an easy online permitting where they can just check boxes and just get their permit online 24 hours a day for this. It's going to cause a tremendous burden. I think this requires a lot of conversation. Ms. Rodriguez.
And actually, could I just ask my last question? What would the cost of this permit be?
We don't know.
We're looking that it would be a 2-hour plan review, so it would be $432.
And I think you brought up the great example of an employee barbecue in your own parking lot, too, like that people do every single day.
And there's a lot of block parties.
There's so many of the block parties.
So many. That I help in the funding.
Yeah.
And this is probably an extra cost.
Was this originated by a council motion?
No, it was not.
Okay.
I would like to say that what we're talking about here is not adding any additional regulations than the fire department already participates in.
Right.
We're just looking at cost recovery on the time that's spent by the fire inspectors doing these plan reviews that we're currently doing.
Right, but we're also adding some other language.
The language
it's a new ordinance.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
The language on the crowd management already exists in the codes.
Sure.
But what it doesn't do is get quite as specific.
Yeah. Okay. Mr. O'Farrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know it's hard to strike this balance, but to the speaker who talked about events that are of international nature, I mean, the most important thing is that every venue where there are large gatherings have nothing inside that would be kindling for a fire, along with adequately marked exit signs to accommodate everyone who attends any of the events, right? So that's the basic goal, is to extremely reduce the risk of harm and death should there be a fire or some sort of incident. So my question would be, what is the category of structures that would be permitted for gatherings with either amplified music or live entertainment with dancing, things like that? Banquet halls, what type? Because across the district we have special events all the time. And I'm not talking about necessarily the places where there are special promoters that are renting out a space to have, like a rave or whatever. And I am not personally, I mean, I've gone after a lot of the promoters in Hollywood, but we're not exactly talking about this. So what type of permitted structure are we do you have in mind? Is there a list of them that this would apply to?
This would apply to any of the structures that are not assemblage, not designed for assemblage purposes. At the current time, we are not issuing any approvals for use of warehouses or those types, manufacturing types of structures for the purpose of assemblage. And so.
And is that a blanket prohibition? For example, if you went to a warehouse and you looked at it and you thought, well, the exit doors for a large gathering are adequate in this particular warehouse, would that one even that be off the table as well, even though to fire safety standards it would meet the standards?
There's many other factors that come into play when we start talking about the large buildings like the warehouses. And after the ghost ship fire, the city attorney, the Department of Building and Safety, and the fire marshal got together and had some significant conversations with regards to risk management and those types of occupancies. And the determination of the three entities was that it was inappropriate to approve large gatherings in those type of occupancies. One of the other peripheral areas is the seismic capabilities of those buildings, and the seismic requirements for assemblage use is very different from that of a manufacturing or warehousing type use. So that comes into play with it. And as a solution, what the departments have done is started expediting the ability of those buildings to change their use, go through a plan check, full permitting process for change of use. And we've had several that have converted themselves from warehouse to assemblage, and now we are sponsoring events in those types of locations.
And they're adding things like more exit doors, ADA ramps, things like that to the structure so that they can then
Exit
accommodate.
doors, ADA ramps, sprinkler systems, fire alarm systems, smoke management systems, all of the different things that might come into play for an assemblage occupancy.
Okay. Yeah. And lastly, just it's always good to consider the unintended consequences of things like this. I mean, I'll go to a business improvement district gathering in Hollywood, for example, that is in what is not necessarily a banquet hall, and there's a large gathering, and so we want to make sure that it doesn't become too arduous. Of course, no one wants another ghost ship situation anywhere ever, but I think we take into consideration unintended consequences of kind of locking down reasonable gatherings, and that's what I would want to see in this.
And I just want to add one thing too, and turn it over to Ms. Rodriguez real quick. The ghost ship, as the example, and I think that's where a lot of this comes from, and a lot of this discussion and ideas, was not a permitted venue for that type of occupancy, and that's why criminal charges have also been filed. And so I think this also could have a negative effect of pushing more underground, quite frankly, because while it's only a $430 fee on average, depending on the size and scale of the venue, the anticipated audience and the plans, they already also pay DBS and other fees on top of that too. But yeah, Ms. Rodriguez.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, colleagues. I think, to your point, Mr. O'Farrell, it is the unintended consequences that come sometimes with developing tools such as this that I think are with the best intentions. However, when we think about too often, I think sometimes how we develop policy in the city, sometimes we layer on a number of bandages that become very arduous for people to even do programming in the city of Los Angeles. And one of my fears is that, in the context of, obviously, it's our foremost interest to preserve public safety and making sure that we create an environment where people are not unbeknownst to them, putting themselves in potentially dangerous situations. However, I am also concerned with making sure that we're not prescribing a solution that perhaps might only apply in minimal circumstances, and yet we might craft something that might have larger implications for events that occur in communities that would otherwise not be affected by this. So I'm a little concerned about balancing it, number one. Number two, I'm also concerned, and we create oftentimes policies that, with the intent of preserving public safety, are not always communicative to the community in a very simple and singular fashion. And having, Los Angeles is a cultural destination, and we want to create environments, and I know this is particularly true in my district, where we don't often have a number of opportunities. We might find a lot in, for example, the arts district or parts of, these are problems that Mr. O'Farrell, Mr. Rue generally don't have, that I am often trying to create opportunities where we're creating that level of enthusiasm and cultural activity in our district, which otherwise doesn't usually and typically exist. I'm concerned about its implications, the way that it's currently presented right now, without that we could potentially shut down opportunities where we are not going to be very forthcoming with some of the policies that might inhibit activities in certain areas where I think we're trying to prescribe a solution in areas that, because of a couple of circumstances that may not be unilaterally applied across the city. So I'm concerned for several reasons that I don't know that I'm here yet.
Yeah. Okay. Did you wanted to weigh in on something? I'm sorry. We're good. Okay.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay.
I would like to comment that what we're talking about is buildings and areas being used in a way that is not a permitted, approved way
Sure.
to go.
Yeah.
So, for example, when you talk about your meeting of 100 people that show up in a small space that's set up for 10 or 20,
Sure.
that those meetings are actually illegal as far as use of that building.
So already. So this doesn't
Yeah,
change that.
That does not
Okay,
change.
so that doesn't
what
change that.
is not approved.
Right. Right.
What it does do is give us a mechanism to approve it,
Sure.
a mechanism to track where it's been approved,
Mm-hmm.
and also it gives us an enforcement capability of, if they are not following the rules that have been specified, then we can shut it down, as opposed to just saying your existence is unapproved, so we shut you down.
Right.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, I just have one question. So what would be the enforcement mechanism? Is this a call to fire to investigate a location where there's an event occurring and that it's just a neighbor that calls, or what is going to be that protocol?
Well, as it stands right now, we go through and we do an approval process in tandem with Department of Building and Safety. And through the Department of Building and Safety, they've developed a process that has not been codified, just like the fire department has developed a process that hasn't been codified. And we're trying to assist the organizers and promoters in having their events and making sure that they're safe. As it stands now, if somebody has the event, we had an event on Friday night that somebody put in a small area that was designed for about 25 people. We counted out 265 people.
But did they go through the process and an application?
No, they did not
Okay,
go
so
through the
again,
process. But that's what we're building is the process.
well, no, I understand that, but we do have a process for them to go to DBS now, currently, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And street services and everything else. And they bounce back and forth. We don't have a seamless process because it's not codified. What I would suggest is that those type of events aren't going to go through a process just because we're creating a new ordinance. Those are going to continue, and they always have, and they always will. And that's not really what we're talking about here. We need more people to come into compliance versus pushing more people the other way. And so what I'm hearing from my colleagues is that this has not been brought on by, and wait, I need to add one other because there's another colleague that wants to weigh in. And that was Councilmember Joe Buscaino, who's listening in and texting me. And he had recently a warehouse space, LAFD, DBS, and the city attorney's office killed a huge conference in Pedro at Crafted, which would have brought in 5,000 people, claiming the warehouse space wasn't perhaps seismically fit. It was a World War II warehouse space that has survived multiple earthquakes. He wanted to note as well. And couldn't get it approved. It had all the other, apparently all the other checks on the box and everything else was fine, but shut it down. What I think needs to occur, from what I'm hearing, is that something should be driven via council motion, because this didn't come through us by a motion, and bring in the stakeholders and the promoters to figure out what they're doing right in these other large cities to embrace cultural activity, to embrace the nightlife culture, to embrace these types of gatherings, and still make them safe. Get more people into compliance, bring the fire department and building and safety, and create a plan where it's easy for somebody to actually do these legitimately, legally, and safely, and have some experts in this space weigh in to how are we going to not say we don't want these and LA is closed to culture and nightlife, but just the opposite. How do we open our doors for these opportunities, bring in the fire department, make sure these are safe, and also that it's not so difficult to get a permit if they check all the boxes. And I think that's the discussion that really needs to set a policy and a framework, and then use that as a springboard to market Los Angeles and tourism and culture. And I think we're going about it just in a different form and fashion here and now. And so for those reasons, I would suggest that we receive and file this ordinance, that a motion, and I'm happy to work on that, or if somebody else would like to bring that in. I think it would be, the timing is ripe. I think there's a lot of other cities, as we've heard and I've read about, that are actually doing this now and looking at it from a different lens, through a different scope of let's embrace culture, let's embrace nightlife. It's particularly our young folks and those in outliers in the city, in the larger cities, that don't get the opportunity to experience culture. And so we should define what that means. And it's going to take a much more comprehensive approach. And I would also suggest bringing in the Department of Cultural Affairs to the table on that and get their input. And that's what I would suggest.
And planning.
And planning. Oh, absolutely. A lot of stakeholders.
I love supporting the cultural class, you know, and artists. I'm more concerned about big events in relation to zoning near residential more than anything else.
Sure.
But I think we should nurture our cultural class and artists and free expression, et cetera. So my big concern, again, is proximity to sleeping children who have to go to school the next day, et cetera.
Yeah.
Other than that, I think we can figure out a way to expedite permitting once it's established that the venue itself is safe. So.
Yeah. Okay, so with that, yes,
Yeah,
that's
so
true. Of course.
I just wanted to make sure, and I think echoing everyone's thoughts, I think we're very supportive of something like this, and at least I want to make my position clear that I think this is a good thing, but at the same time, it's about doing it correctly. I mean, it's echoing all my colleagues' concerns. I want to know more about the cost, the complexity. I mean, is it 49 people? Is it a different number? I mean, there's different classes in neighborhoods. I mean, there's lots of unintended consequences, but I do support the root fundamental because we do not want what happened with the ghost ship or even the stampede that happened a couple of weeks ago. So I do support this, but it's just a matter of, I think we need to flesh it out.
And I think in that, Mr. Rue, it's really important that everybody understand that gatherings like that, those were illegal. Whether we had this in place or not, that would not prevent those events. In fact, those would prevent, they would possibly create more, because if we make it more difficult, more costly, the do-it-yourselfers, the pop-ups, the illegal ones are going to happen and occur more often. And we already get fewer than any other major city. And so we're doing some things right, and I think we're doing some things wrong, but I think we have to have, this is a big discussion. I really welcome that. I would be honored to work on a motion with my colleagues on that, and watch them carry it forward, as I probably won't be here, but in any event, because this is really important. And being, a musician myself and growing up as a drummer, and it's just really important to me that we get this right. So with that, I'm hearing there's a support to go ahead and receive and file this. We'll go ahead and do that without objection. That'll be unanimous, and then we'll work together on bringing something forward that we can all work with the industry and the communities and all the stakeholders on, and doing something that's really positive for Los Angeles. And we welcome your input on that. It's going to be critically important. Okay, great. Thank you very much. I believe that concludes the agenda. Oh no, we still have another item. Item 4. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh no, we also had a correction. Item 4. I have to reconsider. Item 14 was actually for consent. I meant item 13 because we had a change, so I have to reconsider item 13.
Okay.
Okay, so without objection, we'll reconsider item 13. Item 13, we just had a change. It was a vacation request in CD 15, and the request is to delete condition 7 from from the BOE report. So without objection, then that'll be the order on item 13.
Correct. You're going to approve as amended.
Okay, and approve as amended, and then we'll go ahead and that concludes the agenda. So we are adjourned. Thank you.